Good evening. Welcome to the City Council meeting of Wednesday, May 17th, 2017. Could I have a roll call, please?
Dan Carey.
Present.
Peg Coniff.
Here.
Salem Derby.
Present.
Jennifer Hayes.
Here.
JP Kaczynski.
Here.
Joe McCoy. Dan Riss.
Here.
Tamara Smith.
Here.
Joy Winnie.
Here.
Could we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Could I have approval of a motion for approval of minutes of May 3rd?
Second.
A motion, a second approval of the minutes, May 3rd. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any noes? Okay, motion still passes. Public speak time. Is there anyone here from the public who would like to address the council other than what's on our public hearings? This is your time, so you can just come to the podium and just state your name and address, please.
It doesn't come to us, it goes out there.
Hi, I'm Kay Collins. I live at 4 Carroll Ave in East Hampton. So I'm here today representing both myself as a concerned citizen of East Hampton and also the East Hampton Community Coalition, which a lot of you might know as East Hampton Safe, our provisional name. We are a group of residents working toward a safe, welcoming, and diverse community in East Hampton on an ongoing basis. In February, City Solicitor Fitzgibbon wrote a letter essentially asserting that our city charter gives the City Council virtually no authority, aside from the ability to reduce requested expenditures from the mayor. So basically, it relegates the City Council to budgetary approval and not much else. We think that this is wrong, and we are deeply troubled by what this letter means for our local democracy. Attorney Bill Newman of the ACLU of Western Mass responded to Fitzgibbon's letter and is confident that East Hampton City Councilors have much more legislative authority than the city solicitor has implied. I'm here today to give City Council a copy of Bill Newman's letter and to urge you to review it carefully and address the issue of your authority at next month's City Council. I have copies of the letter for all of you, and I would just like to note that it does actually cite precedent that is contrary to the city solicitor's opinion. Just a few points to highlight in the letter. It's my understanding that actually Attorney Bill Newman received a response to his letter from the city solicitor just today. He has not yet had time to review and formulate a response. If there is a response that comes out of that, we will make sure that you are provided with copies of whatever that response may be. Just a little excerpt from the letter, because I know I'm not going to take up all of your time. What Attorney Newman wrote to Solicitor Fitzgibbons was, your letter dated February 22nd, 2017 to Councilor Joseph P. McCoy, President of the East Hampton City Council, which opined that the East Hampton City Council did not have the authority to pass the previously proposed ordinance, significantly tracks the Northampton City Solicitor Alan Seawald's letter to Northampton Mayor David J. Narkowitz of July 8th, 2014. There is, however, an important difference between the East Hampton City Charter and that of Northampton. East Hampton City Charter, Section 6-1A provides, ordinances subject only to express prohibitions in a general law or the provisions of this charter, the City Council may, by ordinance, reorganize, create any city agency in whole or part, and prescribe the function of such entities. The Northampton City Charter has no such provision or one that is in any way similar. In other words, the East Hampton City Charter specifically empowers the City Council to prescribe the functions of a city agency. Northampton's does not. From my own perspective, just as a city resident, I consider the City Council's place to influence policy in our town as a system of checks and balances to anything that's put into place by the mayor or proposed by the mayor. I feel like democracy in general requires a system of checks and balances. So I and we, the other concerned citizens of East Hampton, ask that you review the letter. You will note at the back of the letter there is proposed ordinance language. This is not something that is being proposed at this time as a city ordinance. It is merely meant by Attorney Newman to be suggestive of what could potentially fall within the city charter. I am not a lawyer. I don't play one on TV. I don't even pretend to be a lawyer. So if you do have questions about the body of the letter, you can refer them to Bill Newman.
Well, we have, thank you for your information. That, the city solicitor, kept me aware of that letter as well, and so we are going to, which I thought was going to be here today as well, be getting his response to Mr. Newman's. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So anyway, to respond to your question, I don't know if you heard it because you're passing this out, but we are receiving that same letter, and so we will have that information as well. And just a brief summary, we can't get into, obviously it's a public speak time, so with public meeting laws, but it was a little bit of a gross understatement. The only thing we can do, when we pass ordinances, I think the base of the argument came up as far as telling departments how they can act. But again, we will be getting that letter. As soon as I receive it, all the councils will be aware of it, and we can address it then. But thank you again for participating. Thank you. Anyone else from public speak time who'd like to address the council for anything other than what is on the public hearings? No? Okay. Moving on, I think we still have time here. Communications from elected officials, boards, committees. Councilor Derby.
Thank you, Mr. President. We did receive a letter from Kevin Miller, who is from the East Hampton Veterans Council, and there will be a parade on Memorial Day, Monday, May 29th. We'll start at Clark Street at 10 a.m. on May 29th. Line of march will be Clark Street to Cottage Street, right up Union Street, right at Main Street, around Pulaski Park, continue down Main Street past Library, turn left on Payson Lane, left on Park Street to the library. Ceremonies at the library will include laying of wreaths at all memorials, speeches, a volley of fire, musical selections. All are invited back to the American Legion, Post 224 at 190 Pleasant Street for a complimentary lunch. If you do have any questions, the phone number is 529-1415.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Hayes.
I had a question. What should we be doing about the email correspondence that we've all been receiving? Like, how do we get that?
As far as the school issues
Or anything? Because we've had a lot of emails that have been addressed to all of us, but like if somebody mailed something to us, we'd read it at the meeting, but they email it.
Oh, as far as reading them out loud. Barbara, you know, I mean, this is the whole email is my new precedent, or Dan?
All I can say is any email to a counselor, if you respond, if you choose to bring it to a meeting, that's up to you. But if you respond to it, it's public record. So you should copy anything that, if Barbara hasn't had copies of multiple emails that have been sent to all of us, we should be giving them to her as public record. So if the press or anyone wants them, they are entitled to them. Now, as for you don't have, if a letter comes to you either by email or by post, that is up to you to read it into the record. I, in fact, have one this evening for a CPA member, but they're not required to be read in because they're not, if they pertain to something and you want it on the record, say for this particular letter, it's a CPA item, then of course you can. But it's not required because it's just a correspondence between two people. It's your choice to bring it up. That's my opinion.
Right, so I just thought since it went to all city councilors, which is more than two people, that we have to at least acknowledge it in some way. I mean, obviously it would take us a long time to read everything into the record, but if people don't know that we received letters, you know, from constituents, there would be no reason for them to make an ask to see them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good question, especially with, you know, and also what always comes up is open meeting laws as far as responding to some of those letters. The question is, like, if you're just on the email, is that a violation? Even if you don't respond, I want to have those kind of things clarified. I will call is it AG's office that's in charge of that, and I also just ask, I will follow up to find out what is the procedure of those how do we, obviously they're public record, as long as,
Right.
But as you said, it's to have that information out there. Let me check with them and I'll get back to you on that.
Well, I mean, I usually do reply. I usually just say thank you to
Right,
at least
right.
acknowledge
Oh, yeah.
I received it.
Right. But I mean, as far as the public knowing that they've been received, do we just have to make an announcement, or?
Well, were we-
Let me ask Joyce first.
Well, that's public information. All emails are open to public
Right.
information, and most of the emails we've been getting have been going through to the school committee and then to us, CC'd us. So it's all in the record anyways. So any response that you do, if you respond to all.
Is it in the record?
Oh,
Well, what I'm
both
saying
sides,
is,
the school committee
How
and
would
then
you
the
define
city
it
council.
being in the
Yeah, but
record?
like, does the public know about it, I think is the question.
Right.
And so is the school committee putting it in the record, or do we have to put it in the record? And I think, Joe, that's what you're gonna.
Well,
Right, I want to find out.
Yeah, I think
especially
the
with
school
emails
committee
and
has to
stuff
put it
like
in the record because it initially goes to them. We're just CC'd it all.
all I'm,
This could go to rules.
that. Okay,
all I'm saying is that, number one, saying thank you is one thing, but we can't debate something
Right.
that might be on our
No
agenda.
debate.
Right.
But if it's not on our agenda, it's on the school committee agenda, if
Yeah.
counselors start talking about it, I would caution that anyway, because
Right.
that's still, you're talking in virtual space.
Right.
However, it's on the record in the sense that it has to go to Barbara. If you get something that is CC'd, is just directed to you, and it pertains to something that's council related, can we do something about my road, it's got a pothole, that's not necessary. But something that is council related, I think it has to go to Barbara, and that puts it in the record. Now, it may be that one of the things we can say to the public, every council meeting, we've been getting a lot of correspondence, if you wish to find out what it was regarding this and that, see Barbara, that might be a solution to rather than reading 20 emails. But Barbara can provide them to everybody as the clerk of the council, anybody, the press, anybody who needs
See
them.
the school.
That's what I would
I will
say.
check on that, when
Check on
maybe
AG
we
on
received
it.
an email from Jane Doe in favor of or against this, or general, and that information is available. But excellent question, I will follow up on that for you.
Great, thank you.
Additional question, comments? I know this is also the time where sometimes also, if anyone, district counselors or precincts
Mayor.
want to make comments about anything going on in your districts.
Mayor.
Well, I know there's like big rig.
Big Rig Day,
happening this weekend.
exactly, coming up. I know Cultural
Fishing
Chaos is coming
derby.
up. The Fishing Derby, you go.
Usually the community center has pancake breakfast just before the parade.
Okay. on the
I think
29th.
they like start serving around 9 or 8:30 or so.
Okay,
So people might want to be aware of that.
good.
Townwide tag sale Saturday,
There
Oh,
you
yeah.
go. Is it too late to add your name in, Barb? Okay, there you go.
and Rail Trail breakfast.
Okay, on what day, Saturday?
Is Barbara
There you
cooking?
go.
Everything's Saturday.
Everything's Saturday. Okay, but anyway, I'm sure all that,
Except for Big Rig Day.
is all that information on our city calendar?
Rather be here.
Some of it.
Some of it, okay. A good place to start anyway. Anyway, moving on though. So Mayor Communications?
I was just going to mention a couple of the events, and
Okay.
thank you for covering them.
Oh, okay, thank you. So I think we have, do you want to start with
3 minutes.
finance?
I have just a brief one.
Okay, Councilor Risk Finance, please.
Yes, the 2018 budget was discussed yesterday and will be discussed on Monday, the 22nd, and next Wednesday, the 24th at 5 o'clock. If you have questions, you can either come to this meeting, of course, the mayor and the finance director are there, or if you can't make it, please feel free to call the mayor or the finance director. What does this mean? They're ready to answer your questions. I ask you to do that because at the public hearing, I'd rather hear from the public than all of us asking the same questions we could have asked before, but of course you can. I would like to now, in the form of a motion, request a public hearing be held at the next meeting in June, our first meeting in June, for the FY 2018 budget.
Second.
Okay, motion is second to set a public hearing for the 2018 budget, June 7th.
7th.
Any additional, is there a second for that?
Yeah, somebody seconded.
Yeah,
I
second.
did.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
That concludes.
That concludes, okay, I think we're close enough to open public hearings.
Move that we open the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes. So public hearings, finance as usual, Councilor Rist.
As I'm getting a little self-conscious about hearing my voice, and I'm sure you're all sick of me, I have asked my colleagues, Councilor Carey and Councilor Coniff, to take over some of these. So Councilor Carey, could you do the first two items on the agenda, please?
So the first item is an interdepartmental transfer of $10,000 to supplement the Medicare budget. It was approved 3-0 by the Finance Committee on May 10th. And it's the payroll taxes that need to we need another $10,000 to true up to what those taxes are for this year. Great.
Anyone from the city, the mayor, or finance director want to address the?
Do you have any?
Are there questions concerning this appropriation?
It's pretty straightforward.
I don't think so. Okay, is there anyone from the public then who would like to address the council on this appropriation of $10,000? No? Okay, I'll entertain a motion then, Councilor Carey.
Make a motion to approve the following appropriation of $10,000 to be transferred from the reserve fund, $10,000 to be transferred to school Medicare $7,000 and Medicare tax $3,000 for a total of $10,000 to provide funds to supplement the Medicare budget.
Sec-
A motion is second to approve the interdepartmental transfer of $10,000 to supplement the Medicare budget. Additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
Thank you. Councilor Carey.
Second public hearing is a supplemental appropriation of $15,000 for an emergency action plan for the Cottage Street Dam. This was also approved by the Finance Committee 3-0 on May 10th. And this is because of the residential and commercial aspects of Cottage Street that are increasing. There's a survey done on the dam every few years, every 3 or 5 years, and every 5 years. And on the latest one, it was noted that there's all sorts of people living across the street now and new businesses coming up the road. And so the dam itself was classified previously as a significant risk dam. It is now classified as a high hazard dam. And making that jump to the
Names
high
that scare
hazard
the public.
classification just means it has to be able to hold a certain amount of water. And if a big storm comes in and it can't hold that much water, we need to show the state we know what we're going to do in that circumstance. So this $15,000 is to get a qualified engineering firm in to come up with that emergency action plan that hopefully we never use, but we'll have in place.
Councilor Carey, is it involve shoring up the dam, or is it strictly an action plan in case something?
Strictly an action plan.
Councilor,
Is there any reason why this couldn't be done by our own city engineer?
I
you know, the
ask,
deferred guy. Patty, would you mind
answer that one.
fill us in on this?
The plan before for even the inspection of the dam has to be done by someone who's certified. Before it was every 5 years, now it will be now every 2 years. And so the plan that has to be written needs to be done by somebody who works on those all the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, since you're up there, Patty, is there any other questions for the director? No? Councilor West?
Just so there's no confusion, because when you say high hazard, people out there watching might wonder, there's nothing wrong with the dam. It doesn't need repair, but we have to have an action plan in the event we have one of those tornadoes that destroys the top of our mountains come through. So we have an action plan,
Well,
right, or not?
yes and no.
Oh,
We,
jeez.
because they're going to, now it's classified higher, part of it's going to be, there's going to be a hydraulic study to make sure that when the big storm does come through, will it hold? So when they do that study, we don't know what that study's going to show. We're hoping that, yes, the dam as it sits
Oh, it'll pass the test.
will pass the test. If it doesn't, well, that's going to be another issue.
And that test is this is an important question. This test is a stronger test that you would not have had to do in the lesser.
Previously, correct.
So this is it's
So
important
it's
that it be
going
done.
up, so that's why they're going to,
Okay.
Any additional questions? Councilor Derby?
I mean, this might be obvious. I'm just a lay person. That dam has the ability to release water, correct? Mm-hmm. So, if it's a high-risk dam and we anticipate a large storm coming, is there a reason why we couldn't just lower the level of?
It's part of the
Is that part of the? Is that
that'll be
is
part
that
of their
the
plan.
Okay.
Lowering that dam is interesting because of how old it is.
Yeah.
If you ever want a tour inside that building, it's pretty
I
interesting.
would like that actually.
Oh, you might.
Yeah, it's not like they push a computer, it's pretty old-fashioned.
Hand crank.
Do you remember what year that was built?
Probably
I would
before the Panama Canal.
Well, when did it all flood and
Wasn't it
break?
redone in
1940s?
1955?
34.
When it flooded over?
1934. The flood of 34, I think,
So
wasn't it?
somewhere
was a
probably
flood
after
in
that, it all had to be
55, wasn't
rebuilt.
there?
Yeah, but I think there was one in 34 too,
blew
and
out
then the
the dam.
55 blew it right out.
Blew
Yeah.
that
So
dam right out.
55?
Okay.
It looks pretty archaic when you're in there.
Yeah, it
It does, it's not very, like, modern.
And Patty, we actually just did remember a little bit with the boardwalk project. And
Yes.
Remember before with the pond dredging?
Yeah.
So it
It's
does
nothing
happen,
we like
and
to
it's
do,
probably
like,
quite
as a
event.
casual thing,
Yeah.
because in case there's a problem, we don't want to have to
Get it back.
go
up
there,
again.
yeah.
Great. Any additional questions for DPW? Yep. Okay, thank you very much for your time. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address the council on this appropriation? Okay, now being seen, Councilor Carey.
Make a motion to approve the following appropriation of $15,000 to be appropriated from enterprise retained earnings, $15,000 to be appropriated to Capital Water Cottage Street Dam Action Plan, $15,000 to provide funds for an emergency action plan for the Cottage Street Dam.
Second.
Okay, a motion second to approve the supplemental appropriation of $15,000 for the Cottage Street Dam Action Plan. Additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
Pass it off to the next pinch hitter.
Counselor Coniff, thank you for doing this for me.
The next supplemental appropriation request is for $319,494.51 for providing funds for the snow and ice deficit. There isn't a whole lot more to tell about this. This is the money we spent this year on snow and ice removal.
Okay, Mayor Kaji.
And now back to you.
So every so often, I'll tell you about some things that hurt. This one hurts. But what happens is, obviously, there's no way to know what type of winter you're going to have. So, you know, we do our best estimate, and you have to be careful because you don't want to overestimate. But this is the real purpose behind this is so that we don't start our fiscal year 18 in a deficit. So this starts us clear. Other than that, this 319 plus would come right off our funding for the 18 budget. So I look at it as we're extremely fortunate that we have free cash and that we can clear it and clear the deficit. But this is one of the few things you are allowed to go into a deficit and start the year like that. But that would make us, you know, we'd have to find 319 plus in one of your budgets.
Mayor, what does this leave our free cash balance at?
Oh, I have the balances with me on all of them, if you're interested.
I want to say
The
100.
spreadsheet is so tiny, but free cash will be $138,750.49. Do you want all of them? Well, I'm
That's good.
okay.
Thank you.
We're going to be recertified, what, July, August?
Usually, actually, we have our auditor really is usually one of the first to get everything in, so it's usually October.
October.
Sometimes the end of September, but she actually has been one of the first.
Okay.
So she does a great job on it.
Okay.
Councilor Wist, do you have
I just wanted to compliment the mayor because I believe holding free cash over, probably, I'm assuming, and I'm sure she did, knowing that snow might be needed, because we could spend free cash on capital, but we didn't do that, all of it, and we've been in deficit in the beginning of our council city form of government. We had to be in deficit for snow and ice quite a bit each year.
For a lot more than
This is good. I think it's a way to keep us out of deficit. Even though I'd love us to buy a new fire truck, et cetera, this helps us keep our budgets clean. So I think it's a compliment to the mayor for that. Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public who would like to address the council on this supplemental appropriation? Feel free to come up. Okay, not seeing Councilor Coniff.
Okay, Finance Committee had approved this 3-0. So I will make a motion now for the approval of the following supplemental appropriation amount requested $319,494.51 to be appropriated from free cash, $319,494.51 to be appropriated to snow and ice, $319,494.51. The amount requested will be used for funds for the snow and ice deficit.
Second.
There's a motion second for supplemental appropriation, $319,494.51. Any additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
I got the next two. The next supplemental appropriation is for $10,000 from the CPA undesignated fund. The purpose is to rehabilitate and restore the Eckerdale Orchard area. This was passed by the CPA committee unanimously. I believe it was 8-0 because there was one member absent. This is we're going to clean up the site, get rid of pests. Eventually, they have to cut down a lot of dead trees, and I'll let our planner, Jessica Allen, talk about this in a moment. I wanted to alert something that was caught at the Finance Committee meeting, and of course, as CPA Chair, I apologize for not catching it earlier. The budget listed on the back adds up to $14,000, so you asked, what happens to that $1,000? Well, there's two things here. One is, these are all estimates, so it provides a contingency fund. Number two, CPA funds, when they are dispersed, are generally reimbursement, and if they don't use the money, we keep it. So it's not like they're going to have this money and go buy some extra apple trees. Jessica.
I'm just going to give a little bit of background, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jessica Hartwood from the Conservation Commission to talk about the details of the project. But the background of this parcel is, this is one of the Echodale parcels. It's 24 acres on Park Hill Road. This was acquired by the city in 2008. The community gardens are located on this parcel, and adjacent to the community gardens there is a city-owned orchard. And it was brought to my attention pretty early on when I started in 2012 that this orchard was in bad condition, that the trees had not been maintained. There was a lot of concerns from the abutting commercial apple orchard regarding pests, fungicide, mold, anything that could contaminate their commercial crop. And so this has been a project that the Conservation Commission has been thinking about for several years and trying to come up with a solution on what should we be doing at this location. So this is the first step in bringing this parcel into, to take away the hazard part of this parcel, to clean it up. And then the commission is having discussions about what the next steps are for this parcel once it's cleaned up. That has not been hashed out yet, and that's still under discussion, but the idea is there would be some sort of trail system up there in the future, but not defined at this time. So I'm going to turn it over to Jessica, and she can talk about the details. Sure.
So I know they keep on broadening it, but my understanding of CPA expenditures, affordable housing, open space, historic preservation, what category does this fall
This is
into?
open space, and the parcel was actually acquired partially with CPA funds.
It fits in exactly the way
Open space, okay, great, thanks. And if you could just come to the podium and just state your name for the record, please.
Do you want my address too, or just
Are you in East Hampton?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, then, sure.
I'm Jessica Harwood, 3 Mutter Street, and I'm on the Conservation Commission. There's a bunch of people from the Conservation Commission here tonight, as well as Elaine and Russell Brain, who abut the property on Echodale Orchard. So we consulted with the Brains there, the Park Hill Orchard owners, as well as other orchardists about what would be best to do with this parcel. And we were advised by many people that the best thing to do, the most cost-effective and probably healthiest for the land, would be to actually get rid of most of the trees. So a piece of the estimate is for removal of about 60 to 70 trees that are on the property. And then Russell helped us find certain trees that are more rare species and would help preserve the history of the orchard. So there are about 6 to 8 trees that we would keep on the site, and so there's also a cost in there for pruning those trees, and that would be a 3-year project to get them back to health. And then another piece of the project, it would be brush hogging to get rid of all the understory. And then the last piece would be working on invasive management plan and invasive species control in the long term. So we are seeing this as phase 1 of what we'll do with the Echodale Orchard project, just like Jess was saying. And then the next step will be to figure out how to make sure that it is a recreational property that the city can use, people in the city can use.
Do you know, with the pest control, or do we tend to try to go as organic as we can, or is that not your decision, or would you not know?
It wouldn't be our decision. We're going to consult with, well, it would go out to bid, so we would consult. And there are people in the commission who have a great deal of experience with invasives, so it depends on the actual species of what would need to get done.
And also there are, the commission has identified that there are wetlands up in this location, so this work is actually going to need to be permitted by the Conservation Commission. And in the past, when doing invasive control, they've been very conscious about what types of chemicals are going to be used.
I was thinking of the community gardens nearby too, if that would be a
Exactly.
concern for some people.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions for? Okay, thank you for your time. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to address the council concerning this appropriation? Not seeing any. Councilor Rist.
I would like to make a motion that we approve a supplemental appropriation request for the following appropriation. The amount is $10,000 to be appropriated from the CPA undesignated fund, $10,000 to be appropriated to the Eckerdale Orchard Rehab and Restoration Project. Rehab and Restoration, $10,000. The amount requested will be used for the following purpose: for the rehabilitation and restoration of the Eckerdale Orchard on Park Hill Road in accordance with the attached project funding agreement dated 4/20/2017.
Second.
Okay, well, motion is second for the supplemental appropriation of $10,000 for Eckerdale Orchard Rehab and Restoration. Additional questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
The next supplemental appropriation is rather controversial, and I have a number of things to say about it, as I am conflicted as a member of the CPA as its chair and as my role as a finance committee member. This is an appropriation that was requested and dealt with for almost 3 or 4 meetings, because the initial reception by the Community Preservation Committee was lukewarm. It's a request to help historically preserve the Hampshire County Courthouse. The CPA vote for this was split, which is unusual. It was 6-2. Those in favor felt that the history of the building, first of all, let me say, so that anybody might ask, because some of the community asked, yes, we are allowed in the law. It specifically states that we can use funds from East Hampton to preserve and spend money that's in our interest in another community, like we did with Southampton in preserving the water and the aquifer. This is historic preservation, so we are allowed to do it. It fits under the law. History of the building was eloquently stated by Mr. Ford, and he's not here tonight, so all I can say is Mr. Ford, the Hampshire Council of Governments executive director who manages the building, felt is under the gun to get the building restored. It's falling apart. He's been asked to get local participation from all of the residents who own the building. The residents of Hampshire County own the building. It's not owned by the state. It's not owned by Northampton. To assist in leveraging a bond, I think it's $3-some million to repair it from the state. Other CPA communities have provided some funds. Some have said no. Northampton, which was one of my first requests initially, I said I wouldn't touch it unless Northampton ponied up, and they ponied up a great deal of money of $200,000. We reduced the request from the initial, a large amount, to $25,000 in order to give something to help leverage this bond. And we stated, as it is in the contract, that it would not be granted if the bond was not released. In other words, if this bond is not released by the state capital bonding authority, I forget the actual name, it's on the documents, then the CPA money would not be permitted for East Hampton. Those against it felt that this was the wrong way to fund a project, for the state to have to ask the locals to pony up the money first. It's their responsibility. Those against it also felt that we have a lot of historic renovation, like our town hall in East Hampton, that should be preserved as a priority. Many in the community came to the meeting. The CPA meeting had community members come that were in favor of it, but at the Finance Committee we heard from community members that were very much opposed to sending money to Northampton. I'd like to read a letter from one of the members. I handed it out tonight from one of our committee members. I just want to say, I wrote an op-ed because I felt strongly that the community needed to know that the Preservation Committee concerns deeply about our own taxes, and they wouldn't approach this. They were very cautious in approaching this, but they spend a lot of time and a lot of discussion on it, and their mission is historic preservation. So they went to their mission and made this decision based on that. It certainly wasn't done in haste. From Greg Rowland, he's a CPA committee member. Dear City Council, first I am pleased to report that the CPA committee is a high-functioning and thoughtful group of volunteers. Members of the committee take their stewardship of local tax funding seriously. My colleagues and I ask serious questions. We have not, should not, and do not approve every project that comes to us, and I think you can be proud of the work that the CPA committee has done here in town. It is fair to say that the recent Hampshire County Courthouse proposal lays out an extraordinary situation because, unlike any other building in Hampshire County, it is owned collectively by the inhabitants of Hampshire County, quote unquote. It is not owned by Northampton. It is not owned by the state. As inhabitants of Hampshire County, this beautiful historic courthouse belongs to all of us. East Hampton residents specifically have a 10% ownership stake based on population. Furthermore, the courthouse is a massively important and prominent preservation project. Everyone on the CPA committee agreed on this. Right now, the structural integrity of the tower is compromised. The masonry is crumbling. The roof is leaking. The tiles are falling from the tower. The deferred maintenance has reached a point of emergency. As partial landlords of the building, this is concerning. From a preservation perspective, a slow building collapse is not an acceptable outcome. The state has earmarked $3.5 million in bond funds for repairs, but says release is contingent on demonstrated public support for the renovations from local communities. The communities whose inhabitants own the courthouse, the communities inhabitants own the courthouse. The CPA committee was unanimous in wanting these state funds to be released unconditionally. However, this is not the situation. So the CPA committee's 6-2 vote, its first split vote in recent years, sets its own condition. Not a single dollar will go to this project unless the state releases the earmarked funding for the project. And while East Hampton was requested to fund $135,000, the CPA committee reduced that conditional amount to only $25,000 to be meaningful yet conservative, to show leadership for a regional preservation project, and to leverage the $1 million+ coming from the state. This is a priority preservation project that we hold a stake in. I personally believe the symbol value outweighs the dollar value of this grant because the state needs to hear from Hampshire County communities. Other communities need to hear from us, and East Hampton can and should be a leader regionally. The thought was, if we can leverage millions of state dollars at an average cost of about $1.40 per East Hampton resident, it would be worth it. And if the state does not release the funding, it has cost us nothing. As always, thank you for your good work on behalf of the citizens of East Hampton. Greg Rowland, CPA committee member. Now I have to put my hat on as Finance Committee member. The Finance Committee voted 0-2 against the project. The first time in history that I've been here that the Finance Committee denied a CPA project. But they had good reason. I am not negating that. I abstained at the time because I was conflicted. As a CPA member, I believe in the historic preservation mission, but I also know that East Hampton taxpayers, whom we listen to, and I respect their right to come and argue against the project. In fact, I welcome it, and I thought it was great. I abstained to my own lukewarm response initially to the project. Again, it's a project in Northampton. I'm a strong proponent of our own town hall getting done. So if we're going to send any historic money, it should stay here. But I felt that there was an eloquent presentation by Mr. Ford, and all of the arguments that Mr. Rowland just stated presented to me personally that maybe I should vote yes at the CPA level. I will vote no this evening, and the reason for that is something's happened that has really got my dander up. We have been told by the coalition that we will be granted only a 15% match to our own tax dollars in CPA funds. What does that mean? This year we got a 20% first round match. Next year we'll get a 15% first round match. And that second round match may be 15, but if it's 30% total match, that's $40,000 less that we'll receive from the state than we did this year. So that $25,000 that we might send to this project, I felt that I can't understand why the state is doing this to us. The legislature needs to force this bond. There is a House bill out now, House Bill 2615, that requests that from the CPA Coalition Committee, and legislation passed the Senate, and I ask all the councilors to write, we need that match. That match is being certified at 50%. And where does that come from? All the deed, I think it's deed transfer funds, will be given to, go to the pool of money for the CPA trust fund. Now next year, Holyoke, Boston, and Springfield join this pool of money. And therefore, 15%, I think, is a dream if they don't pass this. We will get very little from the state. That being said, it's hard now for this counselor personally, with my role as a Finance Committee member, and if this was before the CPA now, I couldn't support it because of that. That's where I am. And That's all I'm going to say on it. I know there's other members of the committee here, and I know my colleagues on the Finance Committee might want to say something to it.
I have one question, Councilor, if we can answer. This 3.7,
3.5 million.
3.5 million, is that a grant? Is it a loan? Is it something? And if that is some form of loan, who is responsible for paying it back?
It's a bond. A bond is money that the state uses for capital projects. The bond was approved by the state legislature. We're borrowing money, and it has to be released by the group that deals with Capital Asset Management Group. We have a letter. I have a letter here from our 4 representatives that are asking that it be released for this project. But it's taxpayer money, because who pays it back? The taxpayers pay it back. Once that bond is released, that's a loan. It has interest, it has principal, has to be paid back. So it is the taxpayers of the state that are paying for this project. But it's also, what Mr. Ford pointed out also, which also persuaded me to vote against it, is that Greenfield has just had a beautiful new, a welcome center built. Springfield has their new train station. Millions of dollars, but Northampton and this area hasn't gotten that kind of money. So why not release the funds to fix this courthouse? And I said, Mr. Ford, thank you. You just persuaded me that we should wait for them. So that's where that comes from.
Councilor Hayes?
You said you heard from our statewide representatives, John
I have a
Sarback
letter
and-
here that was given to me
And
by
our state
Mr.
senator.
Ford. It's written to the Carol Gladstone, Commissioner, Division of Capital Asset Management and Maintenance. It's from Senator Stan Rosenberg. It's signed by Senator Rosenberg, Representative Stephen Kullock, Representative Peter Kokot, and Representative John Cybeck, asking them to release the bond. I'm going to present it to Barbara for the record, and of course, anybody wants to read it, you can.
Anything from our own state senator?
It's, no, that's true. Senator Hummerson didn't say anything, but the president of the Senate
Yeah.
said, let's do this. So
Okay.
it's there for the record.
Are there additional questions for us, anyone on the committee, or if committee members have any questions? Is there anyone from the city who would like to speak to it? Council, Mayor Cadger.
Oh, I forgot that.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say that I have the utmost respect for our CPA committee. I cannot, and for our residents for voting this in. There are communities, believe it or not, that have not voted in CPA funds, and we were pretty much right up front at the beginning. And I don't have to tell you about all the projects that we've done because they all come before you, and those millions of it would never ever have happened. And I have also your Dan Rist as chairman of the finance subcommittee. He's also the chair of CPA. And we have Jamie here, who's our employee, and she's the assistant city planner. And they put in a lot of time and a lot of effort into these meetings. They're very well organized. They're very, very well run. And I just want to say that I have the utmost respect for them. Not once did I challenge the legalities of this. I knew that, I know how thorough they are, and I knew that would have been researched way before between Jamie and the committee. And it is funny because this is just the first one that I have. This is probably the first thing that I haven't been able to support. And it's not because I don't think historic buildings should be preserved. I think we all appreciate the buildings, but it really comes down to it. As far as, your residents when they vote in things, should they look in depth into every aspect of what they're voting for? Yes. But there are very, very, very few that ever thought that our CPA funds in East Hampton could be used for any other community other than East Hampton. And it's true, they can be. And we have used them. We've actually used it in Southampton. Now, Southampton, again, it's a different community, but that was preservation land over our aquifer. So that's directly related to, obviously, there's not a lot more important than our aquifer. So I just have to say, I've heard from a lot of taxpayers, I've heard from a lot of residents, but this is probably, hopefully, the only one that I won't be able to support, and those are my reasons. It's really because I think the taxpayers just really never thought, they know the open space, they know the historic, they know, park and the recreation part, they know the housing affordable housing, but I don't think they ever thought that we would use the funds for this. So that's why I'm coming forth on this. And again, I commend the committee on all the hard work that they've done in the past and that they continue to do. And also, you know, it's difficult, and especially the things that Councilor Riss was talking about. You know that we're going to be looking at less percentages, and you know it's going to be more difficult. And we have some big projects that, you know, we're looking forward to and really hoping to get off the ground. So it's, you know, it's really a choice in that direction. So I hope everybody understands it isn't anything about against the, you know, the building. It's just, it's a matter of our CPA funds just really staying right here in East Hampton and hearing from the residents. Thank you.
Is anyone from the public who'd like to address the council concerning this appropriation? Please feel to the podium. No, Councilor Hayes.
And Councilor Winnie has
No,
something.
I was trying to get.
You said there were a couple of pieces of information that you were sort of waiting on to see what happened. As far as whether or not we were going to get our full percentage, or
No, we have that information. It's 15% next year. That was, that comes from the coalition. Jamie's our administrator. She can be more specific on it.
Jamie Webb, I'm the assistant planner. So the Community Preservation Coalition is the statewide group of CPA committees that lobbies on behalf of CPA committees, is there for question and answer, and the Department of Revenue looking at the housing, the registry of deed collection statewide determined that the first round match for CPA funds that for the 2017 fiscal year will be 15% of what was raised in each community. There's also a second and third round match for East Hampton because East Hampton elected the 3% CPA tax. Other communities that elected a lower percentage may get the second round but not the third round, and if you only elected the lowest 1%, you only get that first round match.
And was that, and did you say previously was 30%? How much a drastic?
Last year it was 30 because.
Yeah,
we had
last year the combined
total.
was about 35%. It's gone down steadily every year since, but the first 5 or 6 years we were getting 100% match.
100%, yep.
And then starting around 2008,
Yep.
it went down to about 50% and it's hovered around there, dropping
Yep.
a little bit. This year is if we get the second and third round match, it'll probably bump it up to 25 or 30% in total.
I just want to, go ahead. Let's just.
These funds come from the Registry of Deeds collections on mortgages and deeds. So if you buy or sell property, you're paying a tax that becomes the money, the pool of money that gets used for the match. We were way ahead of the curve. We were one of the first communities. We did the right thing. We have 100% match for a long time. You can look at all the projects that we've done, and we're really lucky and fortunate to have been in that position. Now, as more and more communities are saying, you know, this is a real good thing that we're missing out on.
Right.
They're missing out on.
Well, Boston is.
Boston,
waking up.
Springfield, Holyoke, they're taking advantage of this. We'll have our 15%. So I certainly am not going to vote for this tonight. However, there are also a couple of other reasons I'm not voting for it. And it's not because I don't believe in the cornerstone of Northampton being preserved. This is a Northampton project. I'm very surprised that we were presented with this option of joining early. When I say early, there are only 20 towns in Hampshire, 20 communities in Hampshire County. The distribution of ask money was equal for by population. Not everyone in the whole county benefits through the preservation of the county cornerstone of Northampton being developed. If you live across the street or have a business across the street, you have a real boon to your community if you're in Northampton on Main Street or Pleasant Street or on King Street for this project to go forward. So Northampton, I think, in my opinion, should be doing 50 to 75% of the funds for this project. We were asked proportionately to contribute. Northampton was asked $240,000, they contributed $200,000. Only 3 communities of the 15 communities that now belong to the Council of Governments have ponied up. Northampton, Goshen, and Hatfield as of last week. I certainly don't want East Hampton to be the next one to pony up on this project. If everyone else was paying their fair share, we do use the law library downstairs. Citizens can go there for any matter that they want to research, and there's no charge. So there are some benefits to having that structure and the bill, but it's not proportional for East Hampton, so I'll be voting no tonight.
Okay, Councilor Hayes?
I'm actually not quite sure how I'm going to be voting, but to speak to what you just said, like, we got in early and we benefited from almost all of the financial transactions that happened with the registry. Does it make sense for us to kind of put something forward to other communities since we benefited so greatly at the beginning?
Well, I would be one to say that I think we have to look at what's ahead, and we're looking at the old town hall, and that's going to be a multi-million-dollar project. I think we have just over $500,000 in our CPA funds at this time. It's growing slowly. It's not really interested in going to a bond or borrowing for that project, but certainly we'll all consider that if that becomes the only option, if we decide to move forward with this. But to send money to Northampton is not our current priority. We have a huge project ahead of us.
Sure.
Well, and also, I mean, it seems like there's been an awful lot of public feedback on this at CPA meetings and finance meetings, and I'm curious as to why there is none now.
I think they heard the Finance Committee vote. They knew that 3 councilors were voting against it based on their comments that evening. I was lukewarm, and I said I didn't know what I was going to do with myself. And Greg Rowland did a great job for me. He said, and I hope it's true that the CPA committee is not going to chop me up, but he said our role as Finance Committee is separate from our roles. The CPA committee has a role, and the checks and balances that the council has are appropriate. We're not a rubber stamp on anything from the mayor and from the CPA committee. We look at them. And I applaud our Finance Committee members. They listened and were persuaded by those opposed to it and their own reasons. And I think for myself, having all of this other information, especially the 15% match, that really got me angry. Why isn't the state doing this? And my lukewarmness switched to a no, especially because that 15% match, that information wasn't presented to the CPA committee the month ago when this was voted in. That just happened. So that might have turned some heads too. But I want to say something because you're talking about the local communities being asked to pony up. One thing that disturbed me greatly was when I asked Mr. Ford, do you have anything in writing that suggests from this committee, the Capital Asset Management, that you must get this? He said no. It's just a phone call or a subtle thing. Let's get everybody, then we'll consider it. Nothing in writing, though, that suggests that he has to do this. It disturbs me that they won't go on record asking for the local communities to pony up funds from their CPA money. And I would also say this, none of the communities that don't have CPA are even going to think about it. And that's a lot of communities in Hampshire County. So that bothers me that they won't even go in writing asking asking Mr. Ford to do this. And he's forced to go out and do this so he can get the building needs repair. It's the state's job. And that disturbed me too. That swayed me too. Jen has something.
Yeah, it definitely appears that they've got a situation and they're trying to be creative about how they're going to structure this deal, and this is one way that they could do it.
If it helps you, all the citizens of the state are helping to pay for this project
Correct.
through the bonding process once. What they're looking for is a little more from the
Well, I mean, I
communities
had
that
walked
have
in here
CPA.
as a yes with everything that I had read, and your new information definitely gives me great big pause, so.
Councilor Derby?
So, Councilor Rest, I'm just curious, how fluid is this? I mean, do we know, what if the state does decide to release these funds? And then they come back to us and say, well, we've released these funds and we're looking for a different match. If we vote this down, are we the linchpin?
No, I don't think so, because there's nothing in writing that says they're going to do this. And I just read a letter that you have now that you could read from 4 pretty prominent legislators, especially the President of the Senate, that says release it. So I think they're hoping for matches, but with only like 7 or 8 out of the 20 communities being CPA funded anyway, I don't feel that that's going to stop the project. I really don't. But I can say this, if this project was funded by them initially and the bonding was there and they said we need some, that might have been heard better. They already gave $3 million. But let me say this, if they don't pony up and increase the match, the legislature, I don't see how this community, I don't see how we could do it anyway, given that people are opposed to sending money to Northampton. If we have this huge project coming before us for our own city hall, how can we pony up money if they don't come up with at least a 50% match first round and that legislation passes? And I want to say to that, the registration deed fee has never been increased since this was proposed, this was instituted. It has never been increased. And that's from, 2000 when this was passed, I think? So it's been a long time. Jen.
Just to comment on that just for a moment, as prices of property go up, the percentage of income that's derived through the charges for each deed and mortgage goes, I believe, can rise with this. Okay.
I don't know how, you got me there, so I don't know how it's percentaged out, but I was told that by the Coalition Commission. I was told that.
Councilor Hayes?
And wouldn't it be money going to the county, not Northampton?
Yeah, it's going to a building that's for the,
Right.
it's a building that needs preserving, in my opinion. But not all the residents in East Hampton, nor does the mayor feel that way either. So I feel that's,
That's,
It's a tax.
it's a tax. It should stay. It should stay here. So that's what people are saying. Anyway.
Councilor Winnie first.
I know that I've been hearing rumblings for the last few years from a lot of taxpayers about the CPA money being paid through the Registry of Deeds and whatever. And I get a lot of questions, why are we paying this and why is it coming out of our tax money? And then I start pointing out the projects that we've done. And East Hampton, we've been very, very fortunate with our planning department, the mayor, the city council, in leveraging our CPA money against state grants and state bonds so that we've been able to do things that we would never have been able to do on just taxpayers' money or free cash or anything else. And it's been phenomenal. We've done an awesome job. My question here is, who pays for the maintenance of that building now? Where does the money come from for the maintenance of that building now? Do the courts, to the state, does the state that uses that building for their sessions, do they pay rent to the COG? And where does that rent go? What does it do? What maintains that building now? Who maintains that building now? We don't get assessed a tax for that. They,
No.
they're saying we have a percentage of ownership in that building, but I'm not seeing it.
When the Hampshire County government existed,
Right.
they did maintenance on the building. They couldn't do a lot. And that's been, 15 years since that's
Right.
been gone? All of the maintenance is quote-unquote deferred. So no maintenance has been done. And that's why it's falling down. And I'm sorry, but it's a courthouse. And
So-
courthouses go through the state. So I don't understand why the state hasn't
So
done
I'm
some
not done.
maintenance. So anyway.
So my next thing is, the state built the courthouse in Belchertown. If you've ever seen it, it's brand new. The state built
got
the
it.
courthouse in Hadley. What the heck? They're using it. They should be maintaining it. They should be
Yeah.
doing they shouldn't be asking for us to pony up anything. I'm sorry, I'm having real
I agree.
problems with it.
Councilor Coniff?
So my point was, I wanted to respond to something that Councilor Riss said, that that the mayor, and I don't want to speak for the mayor, but certainly from my perspective, that I don't want to see that building
I didn't mean it that way, I
refurbished.
apologize.
I in fact do. I love that building. I think it's beautiful. So the question of whether it should be restored and refurbished is really not the question from my perspective. It is all about the taxpayers of this community and the money they have been paying for this community, and especially in light of the priorities we have with the Old Town Hall. It's just, and everything you mentioned, Councilor Rist, I completely agree with. I think that we cannot be held hostage to what, even what Councilor Derby was saying. Are we going to be the linchpin? If we are, so be it. That doesn't sway me one way or the other. We can't be held hostage to what other communities may or may not do, because this is not structured in a way that is eminently fair. And so, from my perspective, until they can figure out the process better, I don't see why we should approve this or use our funds for it.
Okay, I saw Councilor Riss first.
I just wanted to apologize because I didn't mean to state that. Both Councilor Carey and Councilor Coniff certainly want the building preserved, as probably the residents. They just didn't see, as they mentioned, East Hampton taxes going there. So I apologize for that.
Councilor Kwasinski? I see.
Just back to Councilor Winnie's question about who runs and pays for the project in Northampton. There's the building, the structure, the second floor is occupied by primarily the Council of Governments. That they took over for the county. There's only 15 communities, and I think Belchertown is considering dropping out now, which would make it 14 communities. Only 3 communities have ponied up so far: Northampton, Goshen, and Hatfield. That leaves everyone else not in the mix. East Hampton shouldn't be disproportionately asked to fund this project. If every other community puts up money and it's the linchpin, bring it back to us. We'll look at where we stand at that time, is my statement. But to disproportionately accept the responsibility when the state isn't doing it, I don't think that makes any sense. Now, the COG, back to your question again, the COG collects money from the state, who has the courthouse on the 3rd floor and for the law library on the 1st floor. So state funds are involved.
Raise the
Somewhere
rent. Not
should
for
raise,
maintenance.
through lease.
But not for maintenance.
Raise the rent.
There should be some way to raise the rent on the project, to carry the building.
What do
I'm
most
not sure that the
landlords
state,
do? They raise the rent.
but don't disproportionately affect the taxpayers of East Hampton.
Okay, Councilor Carey?
Just briefly, repeating a lot of what came out of the finance meeting and my no vote there. The basis of my no vote started at the arguments you've heard about keeping East Hampton tax dollars in East Hampton. And while we may or may not benefit from a countywide project, I talked to a number of people who asked me not to support the money going outside of East Hampton and not directly affecting East Hampton, like with the water project in Southampton. I was ready to be swayed at the finance subcommittee meeting and are hoping, to hear both sides. We heard strongly from residents at that meeting, don't spend our money out of town. And all the arguments I was presented with to vote for this didn't impress me one bit. That other towns are spending their money on it. Okay, that's their decision makers with their tax dollars, doesn't affect me. That the state may or may not have a $3-point-something million bond that may or may not come out if there's East Hampton money involved. Doesn't impress me, especially when we have nothing in writing. Yeah, raise this much and we've got this other egg waiting for you. It didn't sit well with me. And the last one is that they asked for $135,000 and in hopes of maybe getting that $3 million, reduced it down to a token 25. And I just really didn't like that phrase, and I understand by token they mean we reduced it by a lot, and it's token compared to. But $25,000 isn't a token amount, in my opinion. You saw the great things we're going to do with some green space at Echo Dale on $10,000. So $25,000, keeping it in town, can do a lot for the taxpayers and the citizens of East Hampton. I also want to state, just because it's been brought up a lot, that our decision going against the CPA recommendation, I never even knew that would be an issue we'd be talking about. That's our job. And CPA knows that. That's why they send stuff to us. And that's why we look at it. We might approve it and we might not. I'm not worried about hurting anybody's feelings, and I was surprised we were talking about it. That they were split doesn't bother me. That's great. That means everybody's doing their homework, and it's going to come out the way it comes out. So that's how I felt last week. That's how I feel tonight. Thank you.
Any more questions, or should we call the question?
I'm happy to.
Okay, Councilor.
We did go to the public, right?
I believe so. Anyone from the public to address this appropriation? Okay, Councilor Wilson.
I am going to read this and ask for a second in the positive, so if you're going to vote against it, whether you second it or not, it's still, you're allowed to vote no. I am making a motion for a supplemental appropriation request for the following appropriation. The amount requested is $25,000 to be appropriated from the CPA undesignated fund, $25,000 to be appropriated to the Hampshire Courthouse Restoration Project, $25,000. The amount requested will be used for the following purpose: for the restoration and preservation of the Hampshire County Courthouse in Northampton, in accordance with the attached project funding agreement dated 4/20/2017.
Second.
I would like to state for the record that the Finance Committee does not recommend this proposal.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any last minute comments, Councilor Wynn?
No, I just would like to ask that a roll call vote be done on this, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilor Durbin?
I just want to thank my colleagues for doing their due diligence and putting a lot of thought into this, and I really do hope that the state will step up and preserve this important building, which I think we can all acknowledge that this is an important piece of our history, and that this just is not the right way at this moment to move forward. So.
Councilor Hayes?
No, and I want to thank everybody. I feel like this is one of the better conversations we've ever had about something coming across our desk.
Yeah, Councilor Rist?
One last thing. Council Carey's correct. We shouldn't be worried about whether or not it's our job as Finance Committee disapproving a CPA action. It's just, for me, it's never been done in my 20 years here, and so that affected me. And secondly, I have two hats, and as a CPA, I have seen so much that the CPA has done. And I wanted at the Finance Committee, but rightly so, they rejected the idea that we send it back to the CPA Committee. You sure you want to ask us for this? I was going to ask them to reconsider it, actually, but Council Carey's correct. It's our job, and we don't shy away from it, and we don't rubber stamp, and I think the residents of East Hampton should know we listen to them. We listen to the residents, the mayors listen to them, I listen to them when they are very concerned that the money's going out of East Hampton. Thank you.
Okay. City Clerk?
Peg Coniff.
No.
Salem Derby.
No.
Jennifer Hayes.
No.
J.P. Kaczynski.
No.
Joe McCoy.
No.
Dan Rist.
No.
Tamara Smith.
No.
Joy Winnie.
No.
Dan Carey.
No.
Motion is defeated.
Mr. President, I move the public hearings be closed.
Second. Okay, motion second to move to close public hearings. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Okay, let's get back to business. Public safety, Councilor Hayes.
Do you want me to do public safety, Councilor Hayes?
Please.
Our next meeting is the first Tuesday of the month. I believe that's the 6th of June. And the mobility pole tower, cell tower request is the only item on the agenda.
Do we need to extend it?
Thus concludes.
Quick question. I mean, I think it's why is it still? I see we're almost a year that's been on the agenda. Is it something we should remove, or is it something that's still on acting that will be something that we will?
Personally, I think it's something we should remove, but I was hoping the Public Safety Committee would discuss that before we did
Okay.
it.
I certainly, I think another meeting or two wouldn't matter that. Okay, thank you. Appointments, Councilor Smith.
Thank you. The appointment subcommittee met this afternoon at 5:30, and we had two mayoral appointments to consider. The first is for Scott Kavanaugh for a position on the Manhan Rail Trail with a term expiration of 12/31/19. And the second is for Douglas Ross for the Commission on Disability with a term expiration of 12/31/19. So we voted 3-0 to approve both of these appointments. So I'm moving it up to the full council.
Okay, do you want to make those in the form of a motion? Okay.
Sure. I'd like to make a motion to accept the following two mayoral appointments. Scott Kavanaugh for the Manhan Rail Trail with a term expiration of 12/31/2019, and Douglas Ross for the Commission on Disability with a term expiration of 12/31/19.
Second?
Okay, a motion and a second. Additional questions or comments? I know during the appointments meeting, our city clerk here is on the Manhan Rail Trail Committee, and Mr. Kavanaugh has actually been attending the meetings even though he's not on the committee, which is always, impressive when someone does things like that. He's also on the CPA committee, I believe, and so I think he'd be an outstanding.
excellent member.
Excellent, and as the city clerk also agreed, and we from Mr. Ross's letter, he has quite a bit of experience in dealing with disabilities and difficult situations, so we voted 3-0 in favor. So there was a motion and a second, so all those in favor to accept those appointments?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes. Okay, ordinance, Councilor Derby.
Thank you, Mr. President. We did meet briefly a week ago to kind of review, which was the 10th. We wanted to review what was on our agenda, get some updates. We will meet again on the 24th, Wednesday at 6 p.m., where we are going to be mainly discussing the seasonal cottage community zoning amendment before our joint public hearing on June 6th with the planning board. And I do want to, as a point of housekeeping, request a 30-day extension to all of our other items.
Second.
Okay, a motion, a second to a 30-day extension on everything listed under other items. So I don't have to read it. Additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
That concludes.
Okay, thank you. Property, Councilor Kwasinski.
The special act to request the 40-year lease of the town hall was drafted and sent to the state senator, Humison, and to Representative Syback so that they could review it, perhaps send it to their councils, and decide if the format seemed appropriate for the use.
So your subcommittee was obviously in favor of a long-term lease.
We had voted to move this forward and then went ahead and realized we probably should put it in a language that could be acceptable to the general court.
Okay, Councilor Riss.
Was the language vetted by the city attorney, or did you feel that wasn't necessary because the state councils are going to look at it?
I think the state councils are going to look at it. The city attorney could look at it. If you think that would be appropriate.
I'd like you to, my opinion, send it to them, because I don't think God loves the councils for the state, but they don't always have East Hampton's interest exactly in mind all the time. Let the city attorney look at it. That's just my opinion.
We can ship them off a copy if it's the sense of the council.
You can tell the council, sir. My permission to do that.
Good.
Okay. That concludes Rules and Government Relations. Councilor Riss.
I have no real report. I have one statement to make, and that's because we talked about the emails we've been getting, copied by parents concerned, the school committee. I had received one of those. School committee was acting and the superintendent was acting in the investigation into the incidents at East Hampton High School. I had gotten one of those asking that the city council get involved. All I can say to that is we have an elected school committee. They have a superintendent that works for them. It is their role to deal with this. It would be inappropriate for this council, although we could make a statement. I think it would be, in this opinion of this council, inappropriate for us to take any action that seems to step on their authority. I asked the councilors. I had a personal meeting with the superintendent and school committee members because I wanted to hear everything. I got a lot, as we all have, from the parents. I believe they actually are taking steps that I applaud in what they're doing. That said, if we do have questions, I ask you to, her door is open, and she'll gladly answer your questions. And I think that the council taking any action, whether it's through resolution, through statement, or any, especially through any financial statements, that would be inappropriate. Although I'll say this, if the mayor or the school committee came before us and said, we need some funding, and they asked for a supplemental appropriation to fund any kind of help that they feel they needed, this council would very much applaud that and say yes to that. So from our point of view, though, let's let the elected representatives do their job and be careful how we respond. We are leaders. I'm a grandparent, and I have to step aside and worry about my kids that are in this school. But on the other hand, I can't separate the fact that I'm a city councilor. I can't separate it. So I just don't feel that we should do anything. It would be inappropriate for us to act and tell the school committee how to do their business right now.
That's Faith?
To speak to that, I think it'd be good if the city council could get updates from the mayor or the superintendent during our meetings. We haven't really heard anything. We haven't gotten a statement or an update. We get them from the superintendent via email, but I think it'd be better to do it publicly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, because I know a lot, or some of us have found out the information. Some of the information is, due to the age, is sensitive. It cannot be released legally and those kind of things. What I have found, and I think other councils found, is speaking to each person independently. You know, if you have a question for the mayor, which mayor, if question for Chief Alberti considering legal aspects of it, questions concerning the school, talk to the supervisor. I mean, I guess it's, I just think it's, you know, what's partially what we're getting paid for is to find out the information for our constituents, and that I think is reaching out to those people who have that information. Like, you know, I guess you could argue either way, but that's just how I look at it. I've always felt that was my responsibility to my constituents. That's my job, to get that information so that I can tell them what's the best way to do it. But so, go ahead.
Is it something that we should put on our agenda so that the mayor or the superintendent or Chief Alberti could be available to us and the public for questions?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're talking that, I think for me, we're talking that, we're crossing that, we're walking very dangerously to that line. It's really not our
Right.
issue. I think it's very important that as city councilors, and we have voices in this community and people listen to what we say. I think it's extremely important. We know the truth, we know the facts, that as we know it. And so that's why I think it's extremely important that we be educated and know what the current, what's going on, the definitions of things are, all those kind of things. But I hesitate from getting involved in school committee business just because of their separate elected officials, as you know, JP's wife is, and those things. But again, that's just my opinion.
Poor guy.
It's been interesting. May I jump in just for a quick second? While we have a role in the community and people, for better or worse, may listen to us from time to time, I think it's important that our role clearly be separate from the school committee role. They are two separate organizations with two separate responsibilities. This is in their bailiwick, and with the superintendent, and they are in the process of seeing this through very thoroughly. Many of us I've seen at school committee meetings where this issue has been discussed. It is the appropriate forum for discussion.
Right.
If we have something to say, we should do our very best to get the information at those meetings, to say something at the meetings, to be present to hear what is being presented. And frankly, to ask the superintendent to come and speak to us, I know how hard every one of them is working right now to take an extra step and come to see us when it isn't our issue. I think would, as much as it might help us, I think we need to go to them. So
I
that
just
would
have to
be
go
my
back down here for
recommendation.
recommendations. I saw Tamara's hand first, Tim.
I hear two separate issues going on. One is asking for an update from the superintendent as a council. And I think that in our charter, we have the right to be able to ask any head of any city department to come in and give an update. And I think that's different from opening up a forum with the public for additional information. So I just want to make clear that I see a clear distinction in those two things. And so
Councilor Wynn?
I look at it as, and of course now with our new presidential administration. I've always looked at it as being a separation of church and state. And the school department has their own board, elected officials that handle strictly the school department issues, the superintendent and all of the administrators underneath them. And then we have the city council, which is the legislation. We give them their money, but they are fully in charge of their full budget. Once we give them that lump sum, what they do with it is completely within their legislative, and it's a law, their rights. So I'm just putting it out there. I mean, I think that the superintendent's done a fine job in keeping us updated with the emails and forwarding things to us and so forth. And frankly, I mean, if you want to know more, go to the school committee meetings or watch them on TV. They're all vetted just like we are. I don't think that they need to come to us. I don't think that we, if we want to go to them and get more information, that's absolutely our right. So.
Okay, Councilor Hayes?
Yeah, because I'm asking for it because I feel like some of the emails that we receive just lack context. Like I don't know the backstory. So if we could get an update from the head of this department, which to speak to Councilor Smith, that is kind of what I'd like. Not necessarily to rehash and put through, but to at least put us into the loop and give us an update of how this situation is progressing and what the next steps are.
I mean, that was an interesting point that Councilor Smith brought up about, our role in being able to call.
We have the right to do it, I'm not sure we should.
Councilor Khan?
So I agree with Councilor Smith. One of the interesting things about this whole scenario is the dialogue that goes on in this room with the public during the 3+ hours that their meetings are. Now, if like me, you are not connected to the live feed, you have to wait for the media to download. I have taken it upon myself to come to the meetings. I have spoken at the meetings semi-passionately about where I, as a resident, feel this is. So, I do think that it's not a burden in a situation like this to ask the head of the department to update us on the goings on, because if you're not at the meetings, or if you have not had information from the emails, and if you have not sat here to hear from the public, hearing from the public is a different thing. There's a whole lot that's going on that you can miss, quite honestly. And I think a very thoughtful, doesn't have to be a 5-hour update to us, but a very thoughtful update of the actions she's taking, where things are, the status, the updates, is not out of the realm of possibility. I don't think that's a big burden for a 10-minute update. But and I think it's not. I guess I don't understand where the big blocking is. I get the concept of there's the school group committee, and then there's our committee, and then there's the mayor. The mayor is here. The mayor is at the city school committee meetings. Why can't the school committee come here?
She's on the school committee.
Well, right, but I mean, she. I guess I just don't understand.
Well, I guess I think absolutely the superintendent has a duty to speak to the school committee and keep them absolutely informed. I don't think it's awful, but I don't think it's a requirement for her to speak to us. I think in that respect, it's up to, again, I don't know, I just put more onus on me as a city councilor to attend those meetings, to have meetings with the superintendent, to have meetings with the chief of police, whatever it may be. I find it more on my shoulders, being paid by the city to find that information, then they need to come to me to give it to me.
I'll be just real honest with you. Do you believe if all 9 of us went into the office, we would get the same exact the same story 9 times? I don't know. I would rather get the story to all of us once, that we're all hearing the same thing. I don't know if you know people better than I know them, I may get a very boxed in response because I don't really know her. So we're not on, see it in the street kind of thing. So it may be a very formalized, fact-based thing. And I guess I just would rather we got a uniform response.
Councilor Riss.
I have two comments. One is, I'm glad Councilor Smith brought this up. There is two parts of this. One is my concern for our role as city council in no way should be perceived as dissuading any parent, any member of the public from coming to talk to us. That is not what I'm saying. We certainly should listen. And I'm happy to have any member of the public come and state their concerns about school matters. As for the superintendent issue, everything, and this is because I have had meetings with her, everything she has stated publicly at the school committee meetings would be exactly what she would be able to tell us, how the investigation is going and the procedures they're taking. Now, there's depth to those, which would take a lot of time, which is what I think Councilor McCoy is getting at, and what I wanted to find out is more of the depth. But the investigations that are going on deal with personnel matters, and we all know there's a certain confidentiality and legality that they have to be careful of. So I guess what I'm getting at is, sure, we can ask her to come and talk to us, but it would be the same information she is required to give at a school committee meeting. So if you want more information, she may be able to get more depth to it to you, and she did for me. So I felt better about that. I felt enlightened after speaking with her, but I'm not sure bringing her here would get us more than she's already made it public, because that's what she can make public. And the depth to it would mean, all right, you're going to ask her to do a lot of depth here at a meeting. It's going to take a while. There's a lot to this. It's very complicated. So I'm not sure. I'm with Mr. Councilor McCoy on this. Go see her, talk to her.
I want to be fair to both sides. Anything on this side, but looking at this side, okay, Councilor Winnie?
No, I just want to put into that we can have the mayor give us updates as to what's happening. She sits on.
There you go.
She sits on the school committee. I mean, she can just give us the outline of what's happening and the dates and the timeline. The same thing that the superintendent can do. And I think that the superintendent right now has so much on her plate that we don't need to have her here. If you need to see her and you want more background, make an appointment and she'll be more than happy to see you. But I think for updates and things like that, I think the mayor is more than capable of doing that.
Well, Mayor
for us
Kedra, I mean,
and
the
just-
meeting isn't closed yet. I mean, I don't know.
There was no mayor correspondence.
She didn't have anything to say.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we
She
can
does now.
we can reopen mayor
All
communication.
you're going to do is ask, first of all. So let me just tell you, and I know JP, as his wife is an elected school committee member, I know that he absolutely knows that the school committee, myself, the chief, the superintendent have pretty much done nothing much more than this situation. There is non-stop activity on this. I have had personally, I arranged a meeting with the Department of Justice, my first visit to the federal courthouse in Springfield. I've had 3 meetings with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and am scheduling, we're scheduling a bunch of forums. It'll be a community forum for the students. But in the meantime, there's the AG's office has been contacted. There is an outside investigation happening. I can't believe that nobody doesn't realize that the Educational Collaborative from Northampton was called in immediately to start a series of forums with the administrators, the students, the parents. I look at it as no stone has been left unturned, and everywhere we go as we go through the school committee, myself personally, or with the superintendent. Everyone is amazed that we are just saying, look, what help is available to us. We are going there where we need information, we need assistance, and we're going to be doing and this word, I always say it wrong because I want to put an L in it, anti-defamation there goes the L. Defamation, say it.
Defamation.
Anti-defamation.
Right, I always want to put an
like
L in
being
there.
able to do
So
that.
anti-defamation forum, we've called in specialists in the field. So, and we've had, easily 3 very lengthy public meetings, open to the public for the school, for the school committee. The superintendent could not be more open and more available. And if you have any questions, a simple email would do it. You could simply email me, what's the status? Can you give me a brief outline of what's being done? That's as simple as a simple email, a simple phone call, a simple stopping into an office. But honestly, the school committee, the school committee members have met with parents for hours and hours and hours and weeks and weeks and weeks on end addressing this. So to ask somebody to come in here, to be present and on your agenda, and I think what's going to happen on your agenda, you're going to get another public forum here, which is a school committee, item. So you want updates, all you got to do is ask. I'm right here. I can tell you so many of the things that, that are happening. There are so many things we can't tell, we can't speak about, because obviously about student confidentiality and students' rights. So, but we can tell you that we have contacted every agency there is. And again, like outside investigations, you name it. And when all the reports are in, and when it's all said and done, what can be released for the public will be released. Obviously there might be some confidentiality parts of it, names, that type of thing, but we will release a report when it's done. But she could not be more accessible and more open, and she pretty much has done nothing more. I think they would really like to get back to their work at hand. And I know the school committee members are still meeting with parents and still contacting parents. So all those emails you see, they're addressing.
Councilor Hayes?
So the Education Collaborative has started doing the forums at the high school,
I think they're
right?
almost done. They started right from they were contacted right at the beginning.
And how are those forums going? How are the students doing?
Oh, well, first of all, there will be a report on those that will be processed and will be provided. But as any forum, again, the forums were separate: students, parents, administrators, and so there will be a report on that. And as to how they're going, I think it was the very first step, and it was taken immediately. And I believe there was a series of 5, and so that was the beginning. But like I said, I've made an appointment and started my research with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and they couldn't be more helpful. And we will be having a meeting with them very shortly. I have had personally 3 meetings with them, and that'll continue. And with their meetings, they're bringing in their specialists, whether it's the Civil Rights Unit, the here we go again, Defamation Unit. So all of those people are. And we're looking at, and we're not just looking at, this isn't going to be just fixed. We're looking at procedures for the future. I'm looking at programs in the fall, peer-to-peer programs. There is, like I said, this has really no stone has been unturned. So I think the school committee right now is probably at their maximum limit. But still, don't hesitate. Just give a buzz or an email, or if you like, I would be very happy to, with myself and the superintendent, just put together an email outlining the things that have been done. It'll be pretty lengthy, just so that you know the steps that the city has taken to move forward. And we hope that we're going to be moving forward it's not a quick fix. So we're going to be moving forward, hopefully for years to come.
Councilor Hayes?
No, and I think, we all appreciate the work that you guys have all put into it and the different forums that are happening. But, being unable to attend any of the high school forums, just an update to see how they're going, how they're being received, if, the students
There will be a
are
report that will be listed at the end. Her name is Sapphire, and she will be compiling a report of exactly what happened and a process and, and recommendations. So, as to, asking a student, everybody's going to have a different opinion. Some might have found them very beneficial, some might not have. But there will be a report furnished by her. This is we actually contracted with her. This is not just a free service that just came down the street. So there's a fee for it, and she's a professional, and she will be putting together a whole report based on findings and then also suggestions. Same thing along with the next forum that, we will be planning. And that'll be, suggestions will come out of that and, preparation for the future and lots of programs that we can put in place. And just the programs that I was looking at, I think my last meeting with them was Monday, waiting to hear on another date. I think the just looking at the peer-to-peer programs for adults, for teachers, professional development, students, just looked amazingly interesting. And there are huge waiting lists for these programs. But obviously, because we've approached them and they feel that we have a need, they're being extremely accommodating. And and I can tell you that they are extremely impressed as to the way this situation has been handled.
Councilor Smith.
I'm curious to know what intellectual property rights Sapphire has to the research that she's collecting, and whether or not academic research will be published from this using the testimony of our students.
Those are very good questions, and I don't have the exact language of her contract or when she was contracted. So I do know, I believe she works out of UMass, and I know she works with the Northampton Educational Collaborative. And that is social justice is one of her specialties. So that was why right away, immediately they wanted to input something. So as to what her specific credentials are, and she has actually spoken at at one of the meetings. She's been here for one of the meetings to be presented and talk about her program and what she was going to be doing at school committee meetings. I'm sorry, Tamara.
No, that's okay. I have another comment to make. I need to point this out to everybody that these are our children, and I find it offensive to hear that too much time has been taken on this and that we can't bother the superintendent to come here. These are my children's backs. If she has to work 24 hours around the clock to make sure that this information is out, I'm okay with that, and I need to be on record for that. I think making sure that as much information as possible at all times is the appropriate thing to do.
I agree with you, absolutely, but I just think the format is through the school committee and superintendent, and she could come here and tell us, and maybe you could argue that we have a broader outreach. But I mean, I completely agree with you. I guess I just feel that
it's the way in which it's being spoken that I need to have everybody really consider how that sounds, that the oppression of some students is too much of a burden to have to take the extra time. And I don't think that it's intended, but that's how it sounds. And I really, if the superintendent is to come here, is to be as open as possible about the information and have an opportunity, such as what are they going to do with the data. When I'm in the school committee meetings, as a city councilor, I'm also very aware and respectful that it is not my space. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to ask the superintendent in a way that's not intimidating school committee members, for example. And some of those would be more likely to take place if the superintendent came to our meeting rather than as an individual city councilor going to her meeting, the school committee's meeting, and then be overstepping boundaries that way. So I have a lot of opinions on this.
Oh yeah, no, I think as a parent, you probably have more. I think you have more responsibility, more pull than a city councilor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think these questions you should have, with Nancy. But again, I will talk to her and see if she can find time. But I don't think forever there's a minute that I know that it's like nothing is being done. I mean, everything the mayor mentioned, not all those mentions of those legal organizations, those were proactive. Those weren't those groups contacted us. We contacted them. Mm-hmm. The thing that I was really impressed with was with the communications we had with some of the city councilors, just the insight, and say I thought of myself, is that institutional racism that you don't sometimes even know you have. And so there's such more of like people stopping and think, how is my behavior maybe doing something? And there's an incredible sense, I think, in the school committee of looking at those kind of things. And again, I kind of feel, just again, because I've been talking to the superintendent and other school committee members, I'm really impressed with everything. And I'll tell you quite honestly, some of my questions were answered, maybe not so much for my friend here, but through the chief of police. There are questions about what were those charges, who charged them.
Legality.
Those are some of the questions he can answer for you that I won't answer because I don't know if I legally can answer. But Councilor Hayes.
So did the two of you have an opportunity at a school committee meeting to
No,
speak,
we
or-
ran and we talked to Counselor,
Superintendent
and Chief Alberti about these issues. Counselor Hayes was there.
That's
So-
Tamara Smith.
You said
Counselor
Hayes.
Smith.
Counselor
It's
Smith.
been a long meeting.
Yeah, it has been a long meeting. So we had an opportunity to ask this
So
question.
would no, I didn't get invited.
Yeah, no, this is, first of all, we also have.
Did any other
quorum.
city councilors
No,
get
this
invited?
was initiated by Counselor Rist.
It was for me as a parent to get information.
Right.
Counselor Derby came as a parent to get information. It's exactly what you can do. It had nothing to do with council business.
Oh,
So
okay.
it was about parents, and I asked that we attend. I told them I was going in, and they came, Counselor Smith and Counselor Derby, to get better information because we were being asked by parents to present something to the full council because they weren't happy with how it was going. And I needed both sides of the story.
Right.
So I went in, and as I suggest to everybody, if you want in-depth information, it took an hour and a half, and I don't think we asked all the questions we could have asked.
Right.
So I just, that's where I'm coming from. It's better that way. You get personal attention. In a forum like this, of course, and I have kids in the school, if this would help, go for it. But I'm just thinking that was very enlightening and better for me personally, okay? Because it's about kids, and it's about our kids, so.
Yeah, and that was, again, we were even Councilor Rist brought this up. If there was one more city councilor there, we could not have even had that discussion because there would have been a quorum.
Right, I mean, I've got a kid in the
there
system. My
it could different
granddaughter's
groups.
gonna be at the high
So there could
school.
groups, but
I mean-
I highly, that's why I said I really
Yeah, she's
recommend
14.
reaching out to these
In
people
July.
because they can answer a lot of the questions.
I personally would just prefer to do it in a more open and transparent, just to ask a couple of questions, see how the forums are going, see what the reception is from the feedback on how these really good programs are going to be helping us and how they're being received and how they're being implemented.
Okay, I'll talk to the supervisor.
It may help to speak to some of the school committee members and ask them to ask the superintendent that at the meeting for a report and using their forum to answer those questions. They are your representatives.
But I'll go back to what Counselor Smith said, is that I would prefer it as an elected official for my constituents to be able to ask those questions as a city councilor, not as a resident.
Okay.
Because we're getting, I mean, how many emails did we get this week? We're getting asked a lot of questions. Sometimes the threads get a little confusing. And I'm fine with the mayor being able to update us. I mean, I understand that the superintendent's time is, probably stretched, but I think the mayor's update would be totally sufficient, but just an update on how this situation is progressing.
Right. And I need to just, the superintendent is not here, obviously, so I need to just speak for her on this. And Tamara, or anybody, I don't want anyone to get the impression that the superintendent is too busy. That is just not her in any way, shape, or form. What I was saying is it would be, considerate on the counselor's part to, is there other, instead of having, like, they've had so many meetings, but there is not, she would never, ever, ever, ever use those words that she's too busy. And I can tell you that she has been working 7 days straight on this. So I was just suggesting that, maybe if an email outlining to the counselors exactly, where the process is at, if that would be helpful, versus bringing somebody and putting them on your agenda, a city council agenda, which is school committee issues. I understand updates. And I'm also willing to provide those updates, at our meetings too, just a whole list of them. But also in emailing her individually, I know as a group, you've got to be careful of open meeting laws with going back and forth. But you can certainly feel free to call her, stop in, email her, and she would never say that she's too busy. I really feel that I have to clarify that. Those of us that have worked with her know that is just not her style.
Never say it. No.
But I think, it's one of the most deliberative meetings we've had tonight. I promise I will look into that and see if we can get her to give us an update.
Even if it be in something, writing a note, as the mayor had suggested.
Yeah,
Presented by the mayor.
Or to be presented by the mayor.
And if
I
the
think
mayor's
it's
willing to do it,
appropriate.
that's fine too. It would just be nice to be like, these are the 3 meetings that we had this week. One at the high school, one with this. This was, how it was attended. It seemed to be move us, forward this much. And, because if the Department of Justice is here, if the U.S. Attorney Office is here, if the AG's office is here, what meetings are they holding? When are they voting? Who is attending those meetings and what are they doing?
Legitimate questions.
Councilor McCoy, at the risk of speaking for current school committee members, as a former school committee member, I would totally welcome city council questions at meetings, outside of meetings, attendance at I can't tell you how many. It would be very welcomed to see that going both ways. When I was on school committee, that's all I can speak to.
So pardon my ignorance. I assume school committee has the same subcommittee meetings as a similar subcommittee structure?
There are 2, finance
And so would there
policy.
is that a better opportunity for city councilors to show up and have more discussions versus the larger general, almost like what we have, there's more discussion at subcommittee meetings?
Not always, depending on what the agenda items are on those subcommittee
Yeah,
agendas.
because you have open meeting laws subject to their agenda. If their agenda doesn't include you and what their agenda is, then they have an open meeting law violation.
But if they have the topic on the agenda, we can
Yeah.
speak to it.
If you're invited,
If they even have a subcommittee, what 2 subcommittees do they have?
finance and
Policy and finance.
Finance
Policy
policy.
and
So that's why,
finance.
if it's
Policy
on,
would be the
if it
one.
falls under policy in their meeting, then yes, but if it's more, not necessarily everything gets sent that way.
okay.
Okay. Well,
Move we adjourn.
Hey, sure.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Thank you.
You do have to sign stuff,
So you
everybody.
may, June 7th.
Jeez, we're having nothing in the packet.
Yeah, that's okay.